Hello guys, and welcome to the Assassin class introduction video where we're going to be talking about the new equipment and the new abilities of this fantastic new class. Rest assured, things are much faster paced than the previous Crusader, and our concerns about the game being slow paced have been squashed. This chick is loads of fun, and without any further ado, let's get cracking into the video. But before we do, click the little like button, click the subscribe button and that little bell so you don't miss anything. Okay guys, so before we talk about the new armour that comes with this class, I think we should spend a few moments talking first about how we use this. Where the previous Crusader had access to focus, which regained slowly over time, now we have access to adrenaline. Unfortunately, you can't go and steal this from the nearest kid with a nut allergy. You have to actually kill stuff in order to get it. I carry adrenaline myself, so I'm entitled to make jokes about it. Okay, cool. So let's now talk about the actual armor abilities themselves. So the first one is the Hololithic armor. This essentially produces 2 clones of yourself per use, which last for a set duration, and they don't deal any damage. They are just holograms, but they do produce a clone as such, which is used as a target dummy for the enemies to try and smack, and the AI falls for it every time. It's pretty good fun to use, it makes you feel a little bit like a pet class, and it's a really wonderful way of mitigating some damage. Now, next up we have the Fabric Distortion armor, which sounds a little bit confusing, but don't worry, it's pretty simple. You essentially put down an AoE bubble around yourself, which slows the movement speed and fire rate of all enemies within this circle. It absolutely kills frame rates, woo, screen wobble, and, well, it does awesome things to my GPU. It gets pretty scared, but it's amazing. It's really good when you're in a tight spot, or even if you just want to jump into a massive group of enemies, place this bubble down, and for about 8 to 10 seconds you can just go nuts and go to town on them. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, next up, and my personal favourite, we have the Stealth Bodysuit. Whereas the previous two are very compatible with ranged and melee, I think the Stealth Bodysuit really suits the ranged slightly better. And let me tell you why. If you do an aimed shot while stealthed, you basically instant kill more or less anything aside from a dreadnought. You do a set amount extra damage for a surprise attack, and combine that with the very high damage of a ranged ability like the aimed shot, charge it up to the maximum, and you can take out one of the more troublesome targets pretty much instantly. This includes standard bearers, this includes Chaos Space Marine Havocs that might be causing trouble. Just go into stealth, walk up, and blast them to hell. Now, let's move on because we're all pretty excited and we want to see what weapons we have access to. Let's first talk about the rather impressive ranged sniper rifle. So we've got 2 main ones, and then we'll talk about the quirky one. So the 2 main ones include the Exitus rifle and the standard sniper rifle. These are very similar, so we'll talk about the 2 together. They both have a left click of slow rate of fire, high damage, armor piercing, etc. Just what you'd expect from any sniper rifle. Then we have a slightly different AoE shot for each of the 2 of them. The Exitus applies a AoE flaming fire thing, dot, that's what it's called, and the standard sniper rifle just does a little AoE explosion. Really good for clearing trash, so straight away this weapon is armor piercing and good for clearing trash. It's got a lot going for it. For both of them, the third ability is a ranged aim shot, so you can do extra damage, burst fire, etc. And when the decapitate is eventually implemented, which it will be, we get to blow off limbs, arms, legs and heads, etc. Loads and loads of fun. Now let's talk about the last ability, which varies slightly. The Exitus has a ranged piercing shot, so you can shoot through enemies if they're in a conga line, and with the amounts of small funnels in the map you can make enemies conga fairly often. And lastly, on the sniper rifle, the 4th ability, or the ability number 2, is to walk backwards while shooting, shouting "back beast, back." And basically, these 2 are pretty similar in general, though. The one that really stands out is the Needle Sniper Rifle. This is heaps of fun. I love it. It reminds me of my Witch Doctor Blow Dart build from Diablo 3 where you have a triple round firing green darts at the enemy for your first ability. Loads and loads of fun. Number 2 is the typical strafing backwards semi-auto. It's pretty good, not particularly good damage, but it serves a purpose. And number 3, now this is where things start to get interesting. All of your other abilities also apply a very small poison that slows the enemies down. Ooh, kind of handy. However, the more poisons that are on an enemy, the more damage your number 1 ability will do, based off of crit damage and crit percentage. It does some huge spike damage. But, what's this? It also reduces healing for 20 seconds. I'm actually of the mind that this weapon may become mandatory for a lot of groups that want to do some difficult content. Reducing enemy healing, those standard bearers, forget about it, they're not a problem anymore. This is a big, big thing. Now, let's talk about the last ability. This one's also loads of fun. It's essentially a sort of ranged, mild grenade. You shoot and there's an explosion around the area, it fires poison darts, etc. It slows them, applies dots. Really, really nice. So this weapon to me really stands out as being... Ooh, screen wobble. This really stands out as being the most unique of these weapons and lots of fun. Thus far, you can pursue different routes for these weapons. You could quite easily go into Toxin Mastery for the needle rifle. You could quite easily go into Critical Hit for any of these 3 because all of them have plus 20% crit to their single target damage. So crit is very, very viable. You could also just... pursue the ranged combat tree, go for the reduced reload times, etc. And lastly, I'm not going to forget about the long last rifle because that is really a sniper as well. It's very, very similar. It has a semi-auto, a standard shot, and it has a headshot, much like the others. However, it is heat-based, so you might want to build into the heat reduction. And lastly, it has a move that I thought this was a bug at first, but this instantly overheats your weapon. And the cooler it was to start with, the more damage it will do. And this will blast the hell out of anything. What I'd suggest doing is swapping weapon, getting your las rifle out, blowing the nuts off of something, and then swapping back to your other weapon and carrying on. Or having 2 of these weapons. Wouldn't that be fun? Loads and loads of burst damage. Lovely jubbly. Now let's move on to the melee weapons. Actually, before we go on to the melee weapons, I'll just remind you that bolt guns, auto guns, shotguns and various other guns are also available on the assassin class. However, I would say if you're using these weapons and not a sniper rifle, then what the hell are you doing? Because, well, sniper. Enough said. Let's move on to the melee now, because the melee are fantastic. My favourite of the 2, that's a lie, I don't have a favourite, they're both fun. The first of the 2 is the Death Cult Blades. We have a single stacking auto attack chain for number 1, which just applies more damage and more critical hit as you go, blah blah, swing swing swing. Then we have number 2, a poison and dot applying move, which is rather fantastic and rather fun. It's really good for clearing out trash, but believe you me, it's dangerous to sit in amongst loads of enemies just swinging your blades around, so be careful with this one. Number 3 is a dashing teleport of sorts. It's a dash. Now, what I mean by a dash is it will be stopped by obstacles. It will be stopped by the first enemy you hit. So you can't use it to teleport through enemies out of trouble, but you can use it to really dart around. It's got a nice low cooldown and makes your character feel incredibly mobile. And as well as this dash, there's other ways of making your assassin mobile. We'll cover those in just a mo. And the final ability is Death Blow. Giggity. This penetrating attack, which is armor piercing, giggity, also applies extra damage based on the amount of death marks applied by the other attack. So take note of this, use your other abilities first and use this to finish them off. Giggity. So that is this weapon out of the way, done and dusted. Let's move on to the arc blades, which are really, really good fun as well. So the death blades have similar maneuverability, but instead of being poison based, they apply lots of slows, CCs, and disarms and stuns. And you might want to actually consider pursuing the skill tree relevant to these debuffs, the debuff tree. This way you can increase your stun durations, slow durations, and do extra damage against said targets. Now let's talk about the moves one by one. The first one, much like the first from the Death Blades, you're going to be swinging away, stacking up more and more damage as you go and doing more and more crit. Lovely jubbly, nice and simple. Number 2 is essentially a melee version of Chain Lightning, which we've seen in every other game in existence. This essentially bounces damage from unit to unit, doing a little bit of damage to each. Nice and simple, not amazingly quick for clearing, but it does look good and feel good. I think technically it's probably higher damage if you're only against 2 targets than the Deathblade, but I'm not entirely sure on that. Now, number 3 is a very familiar move to many of you that have played ARPGs. It's like Whirlwind, or I forget the name of the move from the Demon Hunter from Diablo, but really you spin in a circle if you hold your mouse button down, assuming you've got it bound to a mouse, and you just move around and slowly kill everything. It's very simple. The problem is you move quite slowly and you take loads of damage, so do be careful with this one. Do be careful indeed, but it's loads of fun and looks pretty good. The last ability. Now this is the best of all of them. This is a leap, and provided the enemies don't have a suppression shield, you will stun them. Note to self here, the first ability does bonus damage in terms of suppression, so if you want to stun enemies, do a quick swing of your left mouse button followed by a jump, and smack, you will stun the pants off of them for several seconds, allowing you to finish them off. Giggity. Now that actually concludes all of the melee weapons for this class. Now next I'd like to talk about the equipment for this class as well. Obviously the equipment is now shared between the two classes, but we've had a bunch of new additions and they're very, very useful for this lady. We have refractor shields, we have reflector shields, we have remote mines, we have delayed grenades. They're all viable, but I would urge you to try the more defensive of these to begin with. You can either opt for a damage immunity for 5 seconds, which is enough to kill a lot of enemies in a big fight, or perhaps you could go with some extra mitigation from the refractor shield, I think it's called, and you can also go for reflecting some damage as well if you so wish. Feel free to try these out, because remember this character is quite squishy and benefits a lot from this. Either that or just throw a grenade at the enemy first, blow a few of them up and then go in there. But make sure you make use of all of the tools and tricks up your sleeve, because this character does die rather quickly. Finally, the most fun thing in the world is we can also use adrenaline to dodge, duck, dip, dive and dodge. That's right, by pressing WASD, as I've got it bound anyway, I think it feels much smoother with this key binding. You can roll around the map and expend a tiny bit of adrenaline per roll, and it is fantastic. Just be wary that if you're reloading, it doesn't currently animation cancel, so you've got to be a little bit on your toes and quick to react. But you can use this to get out of trouble quickly, and if you're going to take some damage from a range shot or even a missile coming at you, just dodge. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to add to this class, and really makes the pace of combat feel so much more fluid, a lot quicker and a lot more juicy. And that actually concludes, I think, everything we need to talk about for this class. This chick has been so much fun to play thus far, and I know I am going to be pumping lots of hours into her. Giggity. Guys, have a lovely day. See you next time.